Welcome in. This is Chiefs Chase. My name is Mike Bassano, and thank you so much for joining me on a show that I've just decided to do. I usually try to have like a specialized name, but the reality is I just want to do the show because I love the Chiefs and I love football.
But they snap it. Blitz again. Stroud in trouble. Karlaftis is there. Kansas City ball.
The draft fallout has been absolutely huge across the NFL, but with the Kansas City Chiefs as well. The Chiefs had what I think is a phenomenal draft. What most draft analysts are calling an A to A+ draft. However, nobody's talking about it. Why is nobody talking about the Chiefs draft? We'll explain why and why their draft was so good coming up here in just a few minutes. Also, there's been a lot of undrafted free agents that have come in, but the Chiefs got one guy in particular who I expect to make a dramatic impact early. I mean, this year, we could see this guy get significant snaps for the Chiefs. We'll tell you who that is coming up here in just a bit as well. But first, we have to discuss the Shedeur Sanders fallout. Travis Kelce and his brother Jason had their podcast. They discussed what happened to Shedeur Sanders dropping to the 5th round after being projected top 5. And we will hear from them coming up in just a bit. But the first thing I want to discuss, and this is like, I don't know why I have to start this way, but I do. The amount of people that pretend to not know why this happened is starting to drive me crazy. Or maybe they're just that inept. Maybe so many people in the media are so far off the mark. And frankly, if you watch sports media often, they're off the mark all the time. Lakers in 5, right? The media is always off the mark, and they're off the mark on Shedeur Sanders too. People are saying, oh, the NFL just doesn't know how to evaluate quarterbacks. That's not true. Oh, well, they dropped him. They made it a race issue. It wasn't a race issue. I'm sure race has some kind of hand in everything, but this wasn't because of a specific race. This was very clearly because the owners didn't like that Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders openly mocked the draft process. If you want to sandbag an interview, fine. But when you go public and you say, we are going to sandbag interviews, we're going to make sure that we go where we want to go, and we're going to dictate the process. That makes a mockery of the NFL. So what you have to do is you have to have empathy. And I don't mean like, oh, feel bad for people. That's sympathy. Empathy is being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and understand their decision-making process. So I want you to do this. Put yourself in the position of an NFL executive, of an executive of a team, an owner, general manager, whatever you are. And you have this kid, this family, mocking the process that you probably feel pretty highly of yourself about, right? I mean, think about you've worked your whole life. You've gotten to this point as an executive in the NFL. And you're here, you're getting ready to draft players. You have one of the biggest multi-billion-dollar organizations in existence. By far the biggest sports organization in the United States by a huge margin. And you have this kid and his dad bragging essentially about how they're going to manipulate your drafting process, not go or not show up huge or prepared for the interviews that he's asked to go to, and only focus on the teams that he wants to go to. You don't think you might pick up the phone, talk to these other guys in the NFL, which, by the way, it's consistently referred to as a fraternity for a reason, because all of these guys talk. All of these guys, like the NFL is an entity. All these teams, you own the team. You own a franchise. The Houston Texans can't decide to not be in the NFL. They're a franchise under an umbrella. So this is a fraternity. All these guys talk. And I guarantee you that this was orchestrated by these guys to send a message that no one will make a mockery of our drafting process. And I feel bad for Shedeur because he's just a kid following the lead of his dad, who could make a mockery of any process because he was the most talented player on the field. And if you are the most talented player on the field, yeah, make a mockery of the process. But you have to understand one thing. No one and I mean no one, is bigger than the Shield. Not Roger Goodell, not Andy Reid, not any of the top flight guys. Hell, ask Bill Belichick. He's not even under the Shield anymore. Nobody is bigger than the Shield. So when somebody like a college player acts like Shedeur Sanders did, acts like Deion Sanders did too as his coach and father, they send a message to the NFL and to everybody watching that you can make a mockery of this process. And the NFL collectively came together and they said, no, we'll bury him because we don't need Shedeur Sanders. The NFL doesn't need Shedeur Sanders. The NFL doesn't need anybody. Think about all the guys who have come and gone in the NFL over the years. Like, do you think Shedeur Sanders is bigger than the NFL? Brett Favre wasn't bigger than the NFL. Dan Marino. We can keep going down the list. Patrick Mahomes is not bigger than the NFL. He's not bigger than the Kansas City Chiefs. So there's a certain understanding, a certain hierarchy that has to take place. And the NFL wanted to send that message. And I feel bad for Shedeur Sanders that it got sent to him because I don't think it's his fault. I would blame Deion before I blame Shedeur. And the fact is, people wanting to blame the NFL, they're coming up with reasons to sort of appease people. I stood fast on this from the very beginning. The NFL colluded to embarrass and bury Shedeur Sanders. I said it last show, and I'll say it 1,000 times over. Shedeur Sanders was colluded against because he and his father openly mocked the process. That's why he fell to the 5th round. It's not because the NFL can't evaluate quarterbacks. It's not because everyone just couldn't handle his arrogance. There are plenty of arrogant players that have happened before. The only people who have manipulated the draft process successfully is the Manning family. And the Manning family didn't do it so publicly. In fact, Archie Manning has such high ranking in NFL headquarters and around the NFL, especially at the time that Eli was drafted, that we didn't even hear about this whole Eli Manning doesn't want to go to the Chargers thing until like the day before the draft. And they manipulated the situation, but they didn't mock the process. They still let Eli get drafted first overall, and then they orchestrated a trade between the Chargers and the Giants, which, by the way, I think worked out pretty well. I don't think Eli fit with the Chargers. He fit very well in New York. He won 2 Super Bowls, both against Tom Brady. What's up, TB12? So the way that they went about trying to manipulate the process so publicly, that's why Shedeur Sanders got sandbagged. It wasn't anything else. That's it. They wanted to protect the Shield. And every time we see somebody try to publicly embarrass or mock the process of anything the NFL does, we see the NFL protect the Shield. It's been that way from the very beginning. It'll be that way when I'm gone. It'll be that way when you're gone. Because the NFL is the strongest league in the United States. The draft, the NFL draft, their average viewership was higher than the NBA Finals last year. Peak viewership of the NBA Finals last year. So if you want to know why the NFL feels the ability to go ahead and sandbag somebody if they feel like it because they feel like he mocked the process, it's because they are that powerful. Like, take a step back, get your arrogance out of the way, get what you think is right out of the way. Because look, what do I think is right? I think all these teams should be their own entities. They come together to play, but that doesn't work because you have to have rules, you have to have regulations. So they have an umbrella. And what that means with that NFL umbrella is that not only are all these teams stronger, but they can do whatever they want. The NFL can do anything it wants. What about checks and balances? What checks and balances? They hid CTE for like 30 years before they finally started to have to make changes. This is what the NFL does. They protect the Shield at all costs. And that's why they sandbag Shedeur Sanders. And you know what? I guarantee you this. People have associative memory, just like dogs, right? If this happens, then this happens. That's associative memory. Prospects in college will remember. If you mock the process openly, you will get screwed. They screwed Shedeur. Absolutely. Without question. There is no world where I'm sitting here thinking Shedeur Sanders is a 5th-round pick or that the NFL can't evaluate quarterbacks, because neither one of those things have any basis in logic. They're just people grasping things from the ether and saying this happened because they don't get it. You got to put yourself in the NFL executive's shoes, and then everything makes sense. Another bit of the fallout before we get to Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce and the Chiefs crushing the NFL draft. One more thing on this. The NFL fined the Falcons $250,000 and their defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, $100,000 over his son's prank phone call to Shedeur Sanders. The minute I saw this, I reached out to my dad just to let him know, like, yeah, I wasn't the perfect son. I had my issues. You had to come up to school a few times, but you know what I didn't do? I didn't cost your company $250,000, and I didn't cost you $100K out of your own pocket. I didn't do that, okay? It could have been worse, because look at what's going on in Atlanta. That was my first thought. And I think everybody should send that story to their dads and be like, hey, I didn't do this. That was my first thought. Because let me tell you something. Jeff Ulbrich's son, he's having a tough summer. Absolutely. And he deserves it. And there's a reason why the NFL had to go after this. I know people want to throw out like, oh, Cooper DeJean, he got a prank call last year. And other prospects got prank calls this year. But this prank call came from the son of an NFL employee. He got the contact information from an NFL employee. You have to punish that, and you have to punish it swiftly. And I think the NFL did exactly what they had to do, coming down with a hammer to let everybody know this is not acceptable.
Sorry about that.
Oh my God! He bought it!
You can't go after somebody who got the contact information from, like, you know, the guy's ex-girlfriend or something like that. But if you got the contact information from an NFL employee and they can prove it, well, they have no other choice. They have to find big. They have to make a point. They have to make a statement that that's not acceptable. And they did. Man, and what a statement it is. $100K, like, I don't know how much Jeff Ulbrich makes, but I know $100K is not nothing for him. And $250K, it might be a drop in the bucket for Arthur Blank and the Atlanta Falcons, but I guarantee they're not happy about it. Like, do you think the Falcons are walking around like, oh, cool, $250K, gone, no problem? Nope. Ulbrich's got, I mean, everybody knows who Jeff Ulbrich is now. Even if you're a casual fan, you know who the Falcons defensive coordinator is. Hey, woo! Part of me wants to know if, like, the NFL went in on Jeff Ulbrich and his son to try to throw us off the scent, you know, of them colluding. Like, they colluded to bury Shedeur Sanders. And then when Jeff Ulbrich's son makes a prank call, because it was such a big story that the NFL was sandbagging Shedeur Sanders, the NFL crushes them. In part, I think, to be like, hey, we didn't do anything wrong. We're fining people for messing with Shedeur Sanders. He's our guy. Like, that's how the NFL works, man. They're very smart up there. They're very smart at NFL HQ. Even if they might make some decisions that make you go, wait, what's going on? Yeah, no. Now, speaking of this is the last thing we'll discuss on the Shedeur Sanders fallout. There were a lot of anonymous scouts making a lot of anonymous claims and anonymous executives. When this happens, a lot of things are anonymous. And I'll explain why here in just a moment. But Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce on the New Heights podcast sounded off.
Reports prior to the draft that his team interviews went poorly.
I think whoever's the fucking anonymous person that's saying this should come out and say who they were and what.
Say it with your chest.
Like, what the is that about? I'm not sure why he dropped, whether it was the interviews or whether it was stuff that they saw on film. What I saw on film, I thought he was a way higher pick. And I think that's all that should matter.
I understand why players are upset when they hear from anonymous anything. And Travis Kelce has dealt with a lot of anonymous reports too in his career. So I can see why he's extra triggered by this. Absolutely. And I stand by Travis Kelce at all times. We all know that. right? I mean, I'm probably the biggest Travis Kelce homer anyone's ever seen. I'll take a random Tuesday and argue why he's the greatest tight end to ever breathe air. I don't care. I love Travis Kelce. That said, when people say things anonymously in the NFL, what it really means is I want to keep my job. Because if it's like, well, I'm an executive for the Green Bay Packers, this is my name, and we thought this. Well, the second that the Green Bay Packers organization sees that you're sounding off about something that has nothing to do with you to the media, you're screwed. Yeah, of course. That you're just drawing a big X on your back. Think about it in the terms of your job. Whatever job it is that you do. If somebody comes to you, like let's say, I don't know, what's a good example of this? What's auto parts? Let's say you work at O'Reilly Auto Parts. And somebody comes to you at O'Reilly Auto Parts, the media comes to you, and they're like, hey, we heard AutoZone was screwing up. You're like, well, what I heard was this. Then you put your name on it. You think O'Reilly Auto Parts is going to keep you around when you're in the media talking about their competitor? They're not, because that's a liability. Same situation in the NFL. Not putting anonymous on it and putting your name on it makes you a liability to the company. And then they will be more inclined to fire you, especially if they have a down season. They go, oh, well, we aren't performing that well. Andy won't stop talking to the media. So that's why anonymous happens. I understand the frustration, but players don't get that because players live in a different world. Players never know how lucky they are. And I've said this since I started doing sports talk radio however many years ago. I don't want to age myself too badly, but a while ago. And people would be like, why doesn't he understand how lucky he is? People say that about athletes all the time. Why don't they understand how lucky they are? Because they don't know what it's like to be you. You know what I mean? Why would they understand? They've been special since they were 12 years old. They've had people telling them that they're like the greatest thing to ever exist in the entire planet since they were 12 years old. They have a bunch of yes men around them saying, oh, yeah, you're the best. Anybody who says anything bad about you, they're just haters. And they've had that since they were in middle school. So NFL players and really pro athletes overall, they do lack a certain perspective because they don't know what it's like to be an average person. How could they? It's not their fault. It's actually a really good thing. You don't know what it's like to be average. Like Deion Sanders, great example. Deion Sanders directing his kid, openly mocking the process of the NFL. Yeah, because Deion Sanders doesn't know what it's like to not be the most talented person in the room. Because he always has been. Deion Sanders, Bo Jackson, Megatron, Calvin Johnson. These are your most talented players that have ever existed, right? I might be missing one. Let me know in the comments. Who's the most talented player to ever exist? Deion Sanders is on that list. So he doesn't know what it's like to not be the most talented guy in the room. So his advice might not be the best. I'm just saying. So thank you, Travis. Thank you, Jason. I understand, though. I understand the frustration. I really do. I see both sides of it. I think I see both sides of most arguments. But the reality is people have to say anonymous so they can keep their job. They're playing the game. And why? But I guess then the counterpoint to that is, then why talk to the media at all? And I think that's a fair point. I think that'd be a very fair rebuttal that I don't have much of a refute to. If you're not going to put your name on it, why talk to the media at all? I think that's a fair thing to say. These anonymous scouts and anonymous quotes, they stay anonymous because people don't want to lose their jobs. So they won't put their name on what they say. But then if you're going to do that, then why talk to the media at all? Is it because you want whatever reporter that called you to like you? That's the only thing I can come up with. Because why give a reporter, why give anybody something unless you're getting something in return? Huh? Maybe these anonymous reports, whoever reported them, watch who they deride during the season. Maybe that'll tell us where the anonymous source came from. It's an interesting idea. Now, the Chiefs have a big question mark that they might have answered after the draft, which is incredibly impressive. We'll get to that here in a few minutes. But first, the Chiefs had one of the smartest drafts in existence, and nobody seems to be talking about it, maybe because they didn't fully understand what was going on with the Chiefs. I saw pre-draft analysis that put offensive tackle as like a middle-of-the-road need for the Kansas City Chiefs, which just tells me that there's a lot of people that don't understand football that are doing draft analysis. I told you way before the draft that the only thing to focus on, the only position to focus on in the first round was offensive tackle. I broke down 4 offensive tackles, Josh Simmons being one of them. The other 3 were taken in the top 10. I didn't expect that. I was very nervous. After all 3, after Calvin Banks went, after Will Campbell went, I was like, but Josh Simmons hung on to 32, and the Chiefs got an absolute steal. And what I love about this draft, look, I promise this is the last time I'll bring up the Super Bowl, but 8 sacks in one game without blitzing, I've never even seen anything like that. I've never once seen a game in my life where somebody got 8 sacks without blitzing. That's how porous the Chiefs' offensive line was in the Super Bowl, and that's why they had to go first round with Josh Simmons and get a guy that can protect Patrick Mahomes. I love that the Kansas City Chiefs spent their first 3 picks in the trenches because that's where your dynasty stays. As long as you have Patrick Mahomes, Brett Veach, Andy Reid. Those are your 3 pinnacles of the Chiefs dynasty. Then you need to be strong up front. And for the last year or 2, the Chiefs have not been strong up front. Their left tackle has been a revolving door. They started 4 of them last year, benching 2 because of poor performance. And now they have to try to fix that. They've gone into free agency. They got Jalen Moore. They got in the first round Josh Simmons. Perfect world, they're both playing on day 1. Simmons on the left, Moore on the right, because Jawan Taylor would be a fantastic backup. He'd be a great backup. Most penalized player on the Chiefs last year. Not necessarily loving him coming back as a starter. Let's see what happens. But here's the deal. The Chiefs are focused on the trenches, and that's what you have to do because focusing on the trenches is 100% how you continue to win Super Bowls. So if the Chiefs had, like the Eagles' offensive line last year, if you put the Eagles' offensive and defensive line on the Chiefs last year, they go undefeated and they three-peat. So the number one thing they had to do was focus on offensive and defensive line. Their first 3 picks, offensive and defensive line. Brett Veach building up the trenches because that is where you win Super Bowls. In the trenches. That's what I love to see, man. Oh, Josh Simmons, Omar Norman Lott, Ashton Gelati from Louisville. Those are your first 3 picks. They're all in the trenches, and that is exactly how the Chiefs can get back on track after losing the Super Bowl, because let's not forget that did suck, right? And the reason the Chiefs lost the Super Bowl was up front. That's it. Like, we could point to all the different things that happened. Travis Kelce had a really off game. Patrick Mahomes didn't play his best. It was really the first game of the entire season that you could say, man, God, the Chiefs just didn't play that well. Like they are not even that well. They had a bad game. They had games where they didn't play as well, like against the Bills, and then they got away with a couple where they won in the middle of the season. They had some games where they didn't play that well, and they got away with it. Raiders, the fumble. They had some games like that. But the Chiefs didn't necessarily play a bad game until the Super Bowl. Now, why did they not have a chance in that game? The offensive line. And the defensive line to a lesser extent. So they had to fix those problems. They had to go into free agency, go into the draft, and fix the problem and protect Patrick Mahomes. And I don't know that Patrick Mahomes said anything to management. I don't know that Patrick Mahomes had any leverage in the draft process or in the free agency process. But I can imagine that if I were Patrick Mahomes and I had gotten planted and embarrassed for an entire Super Bowl, well, then I think I could pretty easily say, it'd be nice, hey guys, hey Brett, hey Andy, it might be nice to get a little bit of help. To not have 3 dudes burying me while the Eagles aren't blitzing anyone. That was shocking. Like, that was absolutely shocking to see the Eagles not blitz anybody, be in the backfield all game, and come up with 8 sacks. That was unbelievable. And then the Eagles' offensive line was so stacked, the Chiefs' defensive line couldn't get there. So this is literally the Chiefs going in and saying, this is the one piece missing from our championship run is offensive and defensive line. Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, awesome. But losing Tershawn Wharton, you had to get Omar in there because he's going to take over for Tershawn. And then you get another edge rusher because that's absolutely important. The Josh Uche thing didn't work out. There are going to be reasons why things don't work out, but you got to keep firing. And what gives me so much confidence about the Kansas City Chiefs going into 2025 is that they saw that, man. They saw it, and now they're going in to try to fix it. And that's what you have to do. You see your problem, go in, fix the problem. And that's what the Chiefs have done. And I don't know that all these guys pan out, but I do know this. If Josh Simmons doesn't pan out, and it's not injury related, if he's just not good enough, not only will I be shocked, but the Chiefs director of player personnel and everybody in that building will be shocked. Because they saw Josh Simmons and they said that's the best tape we've seen in years. And that if he didn't get injured, it would be a totally different situation. But now that he's coming back from injury and that Josh Simmons should be ready by July, that's a huge deal. If you can get Josh Simmons in, and maybe you don't start him week 1, right? I said perfect world week 1 starter. Absolutely. You want your first round pick? Yes, you want your first round pick to start week 1. But that's a perfect world. Sometimes you got to wait. And maybe with Josh Simmons, it takes a little bit of time. Maybe the Chiefs slow play Josh Simmons a little bit and let him get in there every once in a while. But no matter what, I can look at this draft and unequivocally say they saw what they needed to get done. They saw where the problems were, the problems that we talked about on this show, and they addressed the issue. Now, I know that sounds like, well, of course they did, duh. Yeah, it sounds like that now, but when I was saying the thing about offensive tackle all offseason and that should be the only focus for the Chiefs in the first round, there were a lot of people who disagreed with me. A lot of people who wanted to go defensive back, a lot of people that wanted to go defensive line. The Chiefs saw what I saw, and that makes me feel confident because I can't control everything. Obviously, they can't control everything, but they took their due diligence. They saw the issue from last year because it wasn't just in the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is where it became a glaring issue with 8 sacks and no pass or no blitzes. That's just mind-blowing. But throughout the season, if you watched the Chiefs, you knew Patrick Mahomes didn't have a lot of time in the pocket for the vast majority of the season. And now they've gone in and they've taken care of that. They got 2 tackles in. They brought in Jalen Moore. I am very excited to see what Jalen Moore does. And I'm very excited to see if Josh Simmons can come in and take that spot. I don't know why Jalen Moore can't play right tackle. Jawan Taylor's most penalized person on the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he's tied for second most penalized in the NFL. He's either second or third. He had like 15 penalties last year. And Jawan Taylor getting penalties has become as reliable as the sunrise because he gets them all the time. In the worst moments, a lot of the time, too. But if you take away the penalties, Jawan Taylor's actually a really good tackle. So would he be a great option for a rotation? Yes, absolutely. But I don't think he's a bookend right tackle. I just don't. You know what's interesting? This is a bit of a tangent, but I like this. I've come to enjoy offensive and defensive line play more over the years. And I think it's because the NFL has changed the game so much from the one that I played. You know, if you go back to 2006, all the way through 2011, 2012, guys are just getting lit up. Physicality everywhere. Guys are just head hunting. People are making big hits. You had Jacked Up on ESPN. You got jacked up. Remember that show? Guys would just get obliterated. You'd see Derek Blaylock unable to move on the ground, and guys were like, ooh, we got jacked up. Like they were just celebrating CTE at that time. So that's the game that I remember. That game has changed so significantly and for the better. Don't think I'm like, oh, I wish guys were getting concussions every week. I don't. I understand it's for the better. But when you watch offensive and defensive line play, that is relatively the same as it was 15 years ago. So that makes me excited, getting to watch a little bit of football that reminds me of when I played and when a lot of you played. Because unless you're like young, like real young, you played football in a much more physical way than you watch it on TV now. However, in the trenches, it's very similar. They're still mauling each other. It's still rips and swims. It's still spin moves and getting buried by the guard sweeping around the edge. I mean, there is just a lot of fun stuff going on in the trenches, a lot of physicality in the trenches. So I found it more interesting to watch offensive and defensive line now than ever before. But I think a lot of people still, they want to see the passes and the catches and the big plays and everything else. But I like watching the trenches, man. I like watching guys get in there and get dirty, get physical. It's the last thing that looks like football from 15 years ago. It's the last thing. So anyway, one player we all get to cheer on this season is really exciting. We'll get to it in just a few minutes here. There's one player that the whole world gets to cheer on, and I can't wait for it. Unless you're maybe an opposing NFC South team, but we'll get to that. However, the Chiefs have a big question mark that they might have answered after the draft by getting the top undrafted free agent, Florida wide receiver Elijah Badger, a brilliant red zone option for the Kansas City Chiefs. Where he can go up and get the sky-high balls. He's great for the back shoulder. He plays on the outside, which is what the Chiefs are missing. The Chiefs have a ton of guys who can play in the slot. Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, fast guys who go across the middle. These guys are perfect for those roles. But after losing DeAndre Hopkins, the Chiefs have a void at outside wide receiver, a guy that can go up and make those catches in the red zone. And I believe that we will see Elijah Badger, undrafted free agent out of Florida, fill that hole and become a fantastic player for the Chiefs as early as this season, because he fills a very specific need for the Chiefs. He's not an every down wide receiver, but one of the biggest problems for the Chiefs in 2024 was when they got in the red zone, punch it in. And Kareem Hunt helped with that a lot because he could just battering ram his way into the end zone. But you had to get a guy that could be a great red zone threat at wide receiver, and Elijah Badger could be that guy. The reason he wasn't drafted, not a big speed guy, and the NFL loves speed, but this is about fit. And the Chiefs got a guy who fits perfectly on the outside and can make big-time plays happen, and I'm so excited to see what Elijah Badger brings to the table for the Kansas City Chiefs this year, because he could be one of the great additions and one of the great stories in undrafted free agent history. The Chiefs did a great job evaluating this guy and making sure he was a fit. And now that he's in, everybody's excited, because some people had Badger rated extremely high at the end of the season, like a second or third rounder. But the reason he dropped, I think, is that his combine performance, his 40 time, they weren't what the NFL really looks for. But for the Kansas City Chiefs, considering they already have this bevy of speed, getting a guy that you can look to in the red zone to free things up, even if everyone keys on him. Oh, well, they already know he's coming in, so Elijah Badger, watch him. Good. Give them a guy other than Travis Kelce to pay attention to in the red zone, because Travis Kelce's season last year got significantly better after the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. Finally, there was somebody else in the red zone they could look to, another guy that was a big target, and that's what they have here in Elijah Badger out of Florida. Because he looks a little bit like DeAndre Hopkins, but young. And the biggest advantage, like 75%, the 75% of Elijah Badger's snaps came on the outside. Receivers now, it's so important to be the big-time slot guy. But having outside wide receivers gives you a huge advantage when it comes to stretching the field and giving those guys on the interior, those tight ends, those slot wide receivers, getting them open. A big part of that is having guys on the outside who can draw attention. Now, will Elijah Badger draw attention right away? Absolutely not. He's an undrafted free agent. I'm sure the majority of the NFL will probably disagree with me on this. They'll go, whatever. He's not. If they liked him, they would have drafted him with one of the 200 some picks, right? I'm sure they'll say that. But if you watch this guy's tape and think about how he'll fit into Andy Reid's offense specifically, I'm not saying he's going to go with a Pro Bowl. I'm not saying he's going to be a huge wide receiver. What I am saying is that Elijah Badger could step into Andy Reid's system and make an immediate, dramatic impact for the Kansas City Chiefs, especially in the red zone, which is where they struggled. So that makes me excited, and I hope it makes you excited too, because the Chiefs are continuing to build this team and keep their dynasty going. Don't listen to the haters. Don't listen to the haters. I see them in my comments. I read the comments. I know what they say. They say the Chiefs are done. 40-6. They always call it 40-6, which is fine. But don't tell me the Chiefs dynasty is over, because you don't have one iota of evidence to support the fact that Chiefs dynasty is over. They keep building through the draft. They keep having A and A+ drafts every single year. So you can tell me the dynasty is over all you want to, but I really believe when people say that, it's really more of a hope, because there's not legitimate evidence outside of what, a Super Bowl? Yeah, Peyton Manning's career was over because he got housed by the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Oh, wait, no, he went and won another one like 2 years later. Don't listen to these clowns, man. Let these clowns just roll off your back, because all this talk about how the Chiefs are falling off comes from nothing other than unbridled hope. That's all it is. It's not realistic. It's just not. I think we've got everything we need on Elijah Badger, right? Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. We've got a few more things to get here. Now, we have some more Chiefs coming up, and we have some more Chiefs coming up, which is, I think, really exciting. And also, the luckiest guy in sports was just revealed this week. The luckiest guy. Get to that in a few minutes. But first, Hunter Renfrow, the one guy we can all cheer for this season. He was a Pro Bowl wide receiver in 2021 for the Raiders. We all liked him. Everybody was huge on Hunter Renfrow, especially John Gruden. I think Hunter Renfrow might be John Gruden's favorite player ever. If he was 100% honest with you, I think Hunter Renfrow, a short guy, he loves short guys. Hunter Renfrow might be Gruden's favorite player of all time. But after the 2021 season, he was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. He dropped down to 150 pounds. He had a 103 temperature for like 7 days. Absolute nightmare for Hunter Renfrow. But now he's back. He's back up to 185. He's come back. He's signed with the Carolina Panthers. I think he would be a phenomenal receiver for Bryce Young. And Bryce Young, if you're a Chiefs fan, you know about Bryce Young. That guy, that Panthers game last year, I know that people on the outside, because they're so stupid, people on the outside are like, well, the Chiefs didn't play. The Panthers played a great game. There were other games the Chiefs won where they didn't play well and the other team didn't play well and the Chiefs just got away with one. That happened last year. I'm not saying it didn't. But that Panthers game, that was a fight. Bryce Young came out and made it rain against the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you watched him for the rest of the year, which I did because that was so amazing to me, his performance, Bryce Young's a different cat. He is an explosive player. I'm drafting him for my fantasy team this year because I know all the casuals don't know about Bryce Young right now, but you will. By the end of this year, everybody's going to be talking about Bryce Young. And now he's got Hunter Renfrow, a guy that everybody can cheer for, coming back from ulcerative colitis as a great option in the slot as a safety blanket for a young quarterback like Bryce Young. I can't wait to see what the Panthers do. I might become a Panthers fan, a secondary Panthers fan. I always like following an NFC team. If Cam Ward had gone to an NFC team, I'd probably start rooting for them because I love Cam Ward. I'm big on Cam Ward. We know about that after last show. I'm a big Cam Ward guy. I think he's going to change the Tennessee Titans and dominate the AFC South for years to come. Did I say it? AFC South. But he's in the AFC, so I can't like him that much because I don't want any AFC team to be good. I want the Bengals to be terrible. I want the Bills to be terrible. I want the Titans to be terrible. I want the Houston Texans to fall off into the Gulf of America. I don't want any... Sometimes I just can't help myself. What do they even call it? The Gulf? We just called it the Gulf for so long, and now it's become a thing. That's so funny. Oh, but that's what I want every AFC team to fail. So I do choose oftentimes an NFC team that I really like, and that might be the Panthers because I really like what Bryce Young's doing, and I love Hunter Renfrow, man. To go through what he's been through and come back, he's a guy that everyone can root for this year. He's a guy that everyone can really enjoy watching. Because he's a great story, seems like a great guy, and he's an underdog. I mean, he's small, he's undersized, all that stuff. Hunter Renfrow, underdog. Can't wait to see him come back and see what he does. Now, there are just certain non-Chiefs players you root for. Like, I'll root for Shedeur Sanders 100%. Because he got sandbagged by the NFL. Now, you can argue whether or not he deserved that because they openly mocked the process of the NFL draft. They mocked and bragged about how they were going to sandbag interviews. So then they sandbagged him. Now, you can argue whether or not he deserved that. I don't think he did. I think it's a lot. I think it's maybe drop to the second round, but the 5th to Cleveland? That's harsh, dude. That's a harsh message that was sent by the NFL to prospects and specifically to Sanders. So I think like with a lot of other people, I'll root for Shedeur Sanders. He now has the number 1 selling jersey of any draft pick. Shedeur Sanders. Everybody wants him to succeed. And I'll say this. If Shedeur Sanders goes to Cleveland and he turns it around, like let's say that happens. Let's live in a world right now where Shedeur Sanders goes to Cleveland and he turns around the Browns organization and leads them to a Super Bowl. Then he goes down as the biggest legend in the history of the NFL. So I understand the frustration of dropping to the 5th round, but think about the opportunity, the story, the endorsements that would come for Shedeur Sanders if he was somehow able to turn around the Cleveland Browns. Anybody who turns around the Cleveland Browns will be a legend. But if you add in Shedeur's story and then he turns around the Cleveland Browns, the world's going to explode. Nothing's going to make sense, and Shedeur Sanders will go down as the greatest quarterback to ever breathe air. If he turns, I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious because he doesn't have Bill Belichick. He doesn't have all these things that New England had. If he goes to a program, a franchise that has been perpetually terrible for the last 50 years, and he turns it around after everything he's been through, then Shedeur Sanders will be the greatest quarterback who's ever lived. He will be in the GOAT conversation after his first Super Bowl ring purely because he was a 5th round pick to the Cleveland Browns. So that I understand the frustration for Shedeur. I understand why people are frustrated for Shedeur, but think about the opportunity for greatness that he's just been given. And now he has the top selling jersey of any rookie in the NFL. So everybody's behind him. The public's behind him. If he pulls this off, legend. Without question, legend.
Sanders and the Buffaloes pay it off. Here's Sanders looking. Sanders winding up. He's got him in. Touchdown.
So I will say that. Like, that's a thing. I already got to Cam Ward too. So yeah, all right, we got a couple more things to get to. In fact, there's one player who is the biggest question mark for the Kansas City Chiefs heading into the 2025 season. And frankly, I think this could make or break the Kansas City Chiefs season. I don't think that's an overstatement. And I think when I get to it, you'll agree with me. I promise. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, the luckiest man in sports, Nico Harrison, Mavericks general manager, who is probably the most hated man in sports just a couple of months ago when he traded Luka Doncic to the LA Lakers for Anthony Davis and a pack of marbles. I mean, it was a terrible trade by every definition for everybody. And then Luka came to LA and he started playing really well. He started getting in shape. He started looking better. I got to tell you, things had to get tense at the Harrison household while that was going on. And then, if the Lakers had gone to the NBA playoffs and won the champ, let's say LeBron James and Luka Doncic won the NBA Finals this year, Nico Harrison would be the most laughed at person in sports for years, probably for decades. People would be talking about the absolute blunder that was Nico Harrison making that trade to get Luka Doncic to LA and basically make the Dallas Mavericks a non-factor. But the Wolves 1-5. Oh my gosh, how lucky is Nico Harrison? Because it was a strange series. Anthony Edwards is MJ's son and the new face of the NBA. I'm calling it right now. I've wanted Anthony Edwards to take that crown. He's taking it. And there's other things. I know Jokic is out there. I know there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot left to go in these playoffs. But tell me a bigger star right now than Anthony Edwards. It could change, but as of this specific moment, Anthony Edwards is the face of the NBA, and the Minnesota Timberwolves are the coolest team going. Because not only does Anthony Edwards beat you, he walks around downtown LA and talks to you about it.
I'm minding my business, man. How y'all gonna be fucking with me? I just sent y'all nigga home. Tyler, how they gonna do that?
They be talking shit.
Man, they been talking shit all week.
Hey, all the analysts said what they say.
Lakers in 5.
Lakers in
And then
5.
look, when we was up 3-1, they said Lakers in 7.
And they said it.
Go to hell today. Hey, Ty, what is it? Hey, the good guy gonna die in this movie. Hey.
Oh, it's like Michael Jordan with the personality of Allen Iverson. It's what we've been waiting for. It's what we've been waiting for in sports is a guy like Anthony Edwards, and now he's proving it, right? He did it last year. He beat Jokic last year, didn't he? Yeah, he beat the Nuggets. So he's been taking out these legends. All Edwards has to do, win a title. Edwards wins a title. He is the unquestionable face of the NBA, and I'll tell you, he is David Stern's nightmare. I know Stern's not the commissioner anymore, but if you remember David Stern as the commissioner of the NBA, he hated guys like Anthony Edwards. He loved guys like LeBron. He hated guys like Jordan. He hated guys like Iverson, but he would hate Anthony Edwards. And that makes this more exciting because I can't stand David Stern. I could never stand a thing David Stern did in the NBA, and Anthony Edwards is the anti-David Stern. So that makes him, to me, a way more exciting face of the league than Luka Doncic or Nikola Jokic or anybody else who's up in that conversation. More Anthony Edwards. Give me more Anthony Edwards, man. And by the way, I know that we talk a lot of Chiefs, and this is kind of, I'm talking NBA now, which is way out there, but I just like doing the show. And I'll always give you Chiefs. Chiefs Chase will always give you Chiefs because I think it's important to talk Chiefs, mostly Chiefs. But we're sitting here in May. The draft is over. There's nothing really going on. I mean, there will be little things, but there's nothing really going on until the season starts, in my opinion. After the draft, I'm like, training camp's fine. I've been to St. Joe. I've covered training camp. If you've watched this show, you know I did this job for a living for almost 10 years. I've covered training camp in St. Joe. You know what? It's really fun for 2 days. For 2 days, it's awesome. And then by day 3 or 4, you go, okay, you've talked to everybody. You've had all the interviews. You've talked to the rookies you wanted to talk to. You've checked in with Pat Mahomes. You've checked in with Travis. You've had these conversations. You found your training camp darling like Connor Steele or DeMarcus Robinson. My first year covering the Chiefs, not my first year covering the Chiefs, my first year when I came back. In 2016, it was before the 2016 season. DeMarcus Robinson, I was like, that's my guy. And now he's had a pretty damn good NFL career. Played for the Rams last year. So training camp's fun for those couple of days, and then you have weeks of just, well, they did offensive line drills today. Creed Humphrey looks pretty good. Like that's the it's tough. So I'll do some of that for sure, but to me, the season is sort of the talking about season is just a lot of like kind of what's going to happen next until the season begins. So while I'll continue to talk Chiefs on every show, that's my promise to you. Every show we'll talk Chiefs. There's going to be other stuff we talk about too, especially during this time of the year. When the season starts, obviously, Chiefs focused. We'll probably throw some other NFL things in there, maybe some little speckles, but it will be almost all Chiefs all the time. And really, this is going to be Chiefs most of the time. But I love doing this show. I love doing this. This is like one of my favorite things, and it gives me something. Because when I left Sports Talk, I didn't even watch sports for like a year and a half, maybe 2. Because I was in a situation where I didn't fit. That's okay. That happens. That's life. And I got into it so young, and I spent all my time doing it, and it burnt me out so bad that I was like, I felt like drained. And I think I kind of blamed everything. I don't know. What do you do when you get drained and burnt out? You blame everything. But in reality, doing this is awesome. I do a lot of stuff. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that. I do a lot of stuff. But this is like, I oftentimes feel like I was just built for this. I have other stuff that I'm good at. I'm a working actor. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that. I do a lot of roles. Got an audition in 2 hours. But I grew up in Kansas City. I've covered the Chiefs. I went to school in Kansas City, in Kansas. This has been my focus and what I feel I'm best at for so long. I'm always going to do it. And if you want to follow me on this journey, I really appreciate that. But if there are 3 people listening, if I look at YouTube, Spotify, whatever, and I see there are 3 listeners, I'm going to give 3 listeners the best show I fucking got. Every single time. That I can absolutely promise you. And I appreciate you guys all the time. And I know a lot of you are here for just the Chiefs stuff. Maybe you don't care about this. Fast forward. I understand. Fast forward past it. No worries. But I'm going to cover other stuff sometimes too, just purely because of the lack of Chiefs content. Now, with that said, we're going to finish this with one player who is the biggest question mark for the Chiefs heading into 2025, and it very well could make or break the 2025 season for the Chiefs, and that is Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco transformed the Chiefs' offense in 2022, and he continued to transform the Chiefs' offense in 2023. The Chiefs won back-to-back Super Bowls in large part because they had Isaiah Pacheco carrying the rock, running like he eats the grass, just an absolute monster who brought a certain level of intensity into that huddle that we desperately needed to see from the Kansas City Chiefs.
Short. Pacheco almost caught in the backfield. Instead, into the open field and accelerating. Pacheco in for the touchdown. The Jersey Kid back in his home state for 6.
Isaiah Pacheco was an unbelievable force added to this team, a 7th-round pick out of Rutgers that was a shot of energy for the Kansas City Chiefs and helped propel that offense to a height we didn't even know existed in 2022 and 2023. And 100%, I believe that Isaiah Pacheco, without him, the Chiefs don't win either one of those Super Bowls in 22 or 23. And then in 24, he got injured. He broke his leg. He comes back. He has 8 screws and a metal plate in his leg. Very difficult to run the way that Isaiah Pacheco runs when you have all that stuff in your leg. So when he came back, he didn't have that same level of speed burst. He might have had the same intensity, but that speed burst, that intensity that he ran with, that angry running that Isaiah Pacheco really drives from and dominates with, he didn't have it. And that is a huge worry going into 2025. Can Isaiah Pacheco look like he did prior to the injury? Because if he does, if Isaiah Pacheco comes back, and this is very possible, if Isaiah Pacheco comes back with a full offseason to rehab his injury and get back to 100%, and he looks like Isaiah Pacheco of 2022 and 2023, I think this Chiefs offense is going to run roughshod over people, and we might see the best offense we've seen since 2022 for the Kansas City Chiefs, where Patrick Mahomes won the MVP. That is what I'm hoping to see from Isaiah Pacheco, and frankly, it's what I think we will see. Otherwise, the Chiefs would have made more of an effort to get a running back in the draft. I think the Chiefs believe in Isaiah Pacheco. I hope for Isaiah Pacheco, but I don't see him every day. You know what I mean? Like the Chiefs, it's why I was excited that the Chiefs waited till the 7th round to draft a running back, and a guy in Brashard who I really like, Brashard Smith. I really like him in the 7th round. I think he's a great pick. But I was excited to see the Chiefs wait until the 7th round to draft a running back, because it made me believe that what they're seeing from Isaiah Pacheco and his workouts are making them believe that they're going to get a healthy Isaiah Pacheco back who's going to run the way he did in 22 and 23 and open up the entire offense for the Kansas City Chiefs just like he did. And I expect Isaiah Pacheco to do nothing short of work his tail off to get to that point. But that is a key point for this 2025 Chiefs season, because I can't stress enough, Isaiah Pacheco changes this offense. Kareem Hunt changes this offense. I want to see them go get J.K. Dobbins. I want to see them add another piece because I'm worried. But if they're not worried, that's a great sign for Isaiah Pacheco being able to come back for this 2025 season and be an absolute juggernaut for the Kansas City Chiefs, like we all know he can be. He has that ability, and I love Isaiah Pacheco's ability. I just want to see it come back this year, and that is something I'm circling as a major storyline going into this year. How healthy is Isaiah Pacheco? Can he be back to what he once was? Because then we're talking about an unstoppable offense in Kansas City, an offense where I'm like, who would you change out? Who would you change? Exactly. Great times coming for Kansas City. Great times coming for the Chiefs. 2 years with a healthy Pacheco, 2 Super Bowls. And that makes you excited for the season. It makes you fired up for the Chiefs. Hey, listen, I really appreciate you guys listening to the show. I appreciate everything that you do. Please like, please subscribe. Please, anything, share, anything you can do to help this show, I would greatly appreciate, because I very much appreciate all of you. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Have a fantastic week. Have a fantastic month. It's May. Season's coming up. It'll be here before we know it, and I can't wait. Have an awesome day. I'll see you.